Hello and welcome. In this short but powerful session, we're going to explore one of the most important tools in the international trade, Incoterms. Whether just you are a buyer, a seller, a logistics manager, or a procurement manager, or just you are new to the world of global business, global trade, understanding Incoterms will help you avoid costly misunderstanding um, and make this your trade operations smoother and more predictable. Let's see that's the learning objectives. Why just we learn? I mean, that's at the end of these sessions, we will understand, or you will learn, or you will be able to describe as what is Incoterm or what are the Incoterms and why they were just created. What are the key responsibilities of the buyer and the seller? Um, the structure of the Incoterms and the group of the Incoterms and commonly used Incoterms and examples. So by the end, you will feel more confident in applying the Incoterms to any international transactions. Mastering that's the Incoterms. So before just we directly diving to the main discussion of Incoterms, I would like to give you a brief story, real story that happened to my company that's related to this, the missing element, that's the Incoterms. So first, let's see that's the real case, and then as we come back to the discussion. This is a true story that happened um, in my operation. Let me share this a real incident that happened to me recently, which powerfully illustrates the importance of clearly defining Incoterms in international contracts. Let me give us the background. I signed a contract with the Chinese supplier for the purchase of plastic bags, a product we urgently needed. And the agreement covered as a product specification, unit price, total price, delivery time, shipment mode. It was, I think, by air. So I remember that everything seemed in order. I paid the full amount, assuming that the supplier would handle the delivery to our destination, just like most international air shipments I have dealt with before. But this time I was wrong. Just I thought that everything was just in order. I thought that every element of the contract uh, was in place in the pro forma invoice, and I thought that I checked everything and there was no just wrong. That's my assumption. Unfortunately, that's the unexpected happened. So exactly 30 days after signing the contract, the supplier emailed me saying the goods are ready. Oh, that's good news. Please arrange to collect them from our factory. That was the shocking story. I was shocked. I assumed the supplier would at least deliver the cargo to the airport, Beijing airport, handle export clearance, and book the flight. That was my assumptions. So once the goods was ready, just I thought that the supplier would transport us the goods from its factory to the airport, handle the custom clearance, and also expect to book flight for the shipment. But to my surprise, as he firmly insisted, this was his understanding. The agreed price was EX factory. That was what he understood. But the X factory was not indicated or specified in the pro forma invoice or in the sales contract. And he assumed Transport and export process are not included. It was open, not specified. Looked at the costly consequence. I had no alternatives. The goods were ready and time was running out. We needed this product urgently for a specific product, and the supplier was insisting not to deliver to the airport. So what I did was I simply just hired a freight forwarder in China. I paid for local transport from the supplier's factory to Beijing airport. My freight forwarders handled the export documentation and the clearance, and the freight forwarder just booked for flights, and we paid the freight at Addis Ababa. So by the time the goods arrived, the total logistics cost was almost equal to the value of the goods themselves. That was surprising. All these costs were unexpected. Uh, all these costs happened because the one missing element, that's the Incoterms. So why it happened? Why this misunderstanding happened between the buyer and that's between my supplier and me? There it was. There was one missing element. That was the one missing piece, one word. That's 2 or 3 letters. The problem was that no Incoterm was specified. Nothing that defined who was responsible for what. So what was the result? What was the consequence? There was a confusion. There was misunderstanding. We paid us extra costs, faced unnecessary delays to the shipments, puts much pressure, much stress on us, all of which could have been easily avoided with a few letters in the contract. That was the Incoterms. This was the happening. This is the real true story happened between the supplier and my company. So let's keep this in mind, and let's see the few points about the Incoterms. Now let's keep the real case that happened to us in our mind, and describe as the next. The first question is, why Incoterms matter? What are the importance of Incoterms? When the seller exports goods either directly to an importer or through an agent or a distributor, there are several steps involved in the procedures. This may include, the export clearance, transporting the goods, import clearance, and the basic question is who handles each steps, or just imagine this: you pick the product from the supply factory, you transporting them to the airport, you pay for freight charge, and also just handle the import clearance at the buyer's destination. So who does what? So Incoterms does assign this kind of responsibility clearly between the buyer and the seller. The next question is, having identified as the role of the Incoterms, what is Incoterms? What do you understand by Incoterms? I hope that you have heard about the word Incoterms, but how you describe the Incoterms? Yeah, just actually that's the Incoterms. This is an abbreviation, short for international trade terms, which are the set of globally recognized rules developed by the International Chamber of Commerce. These are the terms These are the guiding rules in the international sales contract, which are created or developed by the International Chamber of Commerce. Incoterms are basic and commonly used in international contract, which clearly define who pays for the transportation, who arrange insurance, who handles the export and import duties or the custom clearance, and most importantly, who bears the risk if something happens to the shipment during transport. So Incoterms does help us to remove such kind of confusion, such kind of this ambiguity. Incoterms does give both sides, both the seller and the buyer, clarity and confidence when just moving goods across borders. These are very critical terms, very critical, which clearly define as these elements of the sales contract. What Incoterms clarify? Just who pays in land international freight? Who arrange insurance? Who handles export and import duties? When does risk transfer? When does ownership title transfer? If you put the same Incoterms in the sales contract, all these questions can be properly handled or they are answered. If there is an Incoterm in the sales contract, it's clear that the buyer or the seller will pay the inland international trade, or it's clear that who is going to buy the insurance. It's clear that who handles the import-export clearing process at the origin or at the destinations. It clears that when and where risk transfers from the seller to the buyer. It is clear that when does ownership or where and when does ownership does title transfer between the buyer and the sellers. So these words are just very critical, and clearly define these responsibilities between the buyer and the sellers. Let's see the four groups of Incoterms. Traditionally, as we can classify as Incoterms into four groups: Group A, Group F, Group C, and Group D. Just as it depends on that's based on the level of responsibility the seller takes on and the point at which risks shift to the buyer, or the point at which the title of ownership transfers from the seller to the buyer, or simply the group shows the scope of responsibility between the buyer and the seller, or the burden. For example, that's the AXW, the buyer handles most of the jobs of the international transactions. When it comes to the D, the seller does almost everything. So it simply shows us the degree of the division of labor between the buyer and the sellers. This table simply shows the summary, what we discussed in the previous slide. You can see that there are almost 11 Incoterms in the international trade. But you don't need to just memorize them all the day. What's important is to understand the logic behind the grouping, how responsibilities and risk gradually shift from the seller to the buyer as you move from the group A to group D. So this helps you just negotiate and document international contracts with precision. So when just you move from this A to D, you can clearly see how the burden shifts from the buyer to, the seller to the buyer, the buyer to the seller. You can see that's the level of risk when where transfer of ownership happens between the buyer and the sellers, and so on. And this we will see this in detail in the upcoming training sessions. Let's see that's the takeaways or the conclusions or what we have discussed so far. We have seen that Incoterms clearly defines who is responsible for each step in the international trade. It helps us, I mean, as Incoterms help us to reduce this misunderstanding, delays, and the legal issues. But the right Incoterm depends on your needs, whether that you want full controls of the transaction or you want more convenience. It depends on your choice, or it depends on the agreement between the buyer and the sellers. And always confirm the version using Incoterms 2020 unless otherwise agreed. So when we select this given Incoterm, by default, just we're referring to this the 2020. This is the latest version, the last version that now is used in the international contracts. Thank you so much. That's the end of my presentations. I encourage you to download and study this the Incoterms 2020. If you are a business owner or a buyer or exporter, use Incoterms in every international sales agreement. Don't forget to indicate or mention in the sales agreement. Or if you are just a student or a professional, or understanding Incoterms give you a real understanding in global commerce. If you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like or subscribe, and check links in the description for more resources.